All right, we are back with the Lineup Podcast for 2025. I am Dave Prodan, and I'm honored to be rejoined, and I think fittingly so for our first episode of the year, by my part-time co-host, the one and only Mitch Salazar. Mitch, Happy New Year. It is 2025, and we are weeks away from the start of the Championship Tour season, which kicks off with the Lexus Pipe Pro. We've got a lot to talk about, but first, Mitch, how was your holiday break, man? What'd you get up to?
Yeah, it's been a good off-season, Dave, and not really an off-season. Been a lot of travel too. Went to Los Cabos for a QS event down there in Cerritos. Was able to judge a QS event. In the meantime, went over to Morro Bay to announce the comp over there. Done a couple regional QSs right here in North America. Been a busy off-season. Of course, the Challenger Series finished over there in Saquarema. We crowned our longboard world champions at the end of 2024 as well. So, a bit off-season in between the CT events, but just talking about everything else when it comes to the world of surfing, it's been real fun. Was able to go home to Mex for a week over the holiday break too, see my family. It was super nice. Enjoy the weather down there. And now back here in Southern California, about to leave for World Juniors in the Philippines, which I think should be a real fun event, Dave. And looking forward to not only crown new World Junior champions, also see who gets to qualify for the Challenger Series for 2025.
Love to hear it. I know it's pretty funny, right? We get most of our fans obviously love watching the premium tier of the Championship Tour, and I get that question a lot. They're like, "Oh, it's the off season. What are you doing?" I'm like, "Man, the off season's usually busier than the regular season." But it's good to hear, man. You had a little bit of a recharge, and we thought we'd do something fun. We're bringing back winners and losers. That's sort of a regular segment for Mitch and myself, and we usually do it immediately following a Championship Tour event. We go, look, these are subjective winners and losers. These aren't just the people who won the event. Sometimes they overlap. But we thought it'd be kind of fun to do this segment for the quote-unquote off-season between the CT ending and the CT starting. So let's get into it, Mitch. Winners and losers. Who is your first loser from the off-season?
Yeah, well, it's funny that we talk about it, right, Dave? Because not really a loser here, but just talking about the ups and downs during the actual offseason, to me, it's got to be the veterans. We got a great rookie class, a lot of resurgent surfers back on the Championship Tour that requalified through the CS. Alejo Muniz, Ian Gouveia, Samuel Pupo, who won the Challenger Series in 2024, is back on the CT as the number one seed. Heading into the 2025 season through the Challenger Series. I want to say on the women's side, though, it's just an incredible field. A lot of returning surfers like Sally Fitzgibbons and Isabella Nichols. But, of course, we have the talent like Erin Brooks on the Championship Tour full-time. She's going to be joining the elites like Caitlin Simmers and Caroline Marks. So all those people that are top 10 right now, you're probably going to see a downshift when it comes to them moving into the top 15, potentially even the top 20. And with the cut now being at 7 events rather than 5, that facilitates things for a lot of the young surfers making their way onto the Championship Tour for the first time. But I truly do think that the veterans, they're going to have a tough time when it comes to the start of the event over at Pipeline, Dave.
That's interesting. I have something related to that, but it's over in my winners section, so I'll save it for that. But first loser for me from the off season, we're actually the fans who wanted to watch December's Pipe Masters broadcast because there wasn't really one. We were obviously gifted pirate streams from the folks at Black Bear Surf Club and Nate Florence. So definitely thanks to both of them as we got to watch Erin Brooks, Makana Pang, Callie Voss, Koa Smith, and others take on some pretty intense pipe, like super west, like a lot of sand on the reef. It looked really scary. And look, this is obviously not a dig to beat up any of the organizations involved for not providing a broadcast. Events are so expensive. Broadcasts are so expensive. And we both understand that pretty intimately. And I think fans, they've historically gotten them for free, which is great. I also love that Joe Alani and our friends at the Couch Surfing Show, who we get to work with from time to time, they called everyone out. They're like, look, like everyone's out here being like, why wouldn't you spend $5,000 to do a broadcast or like a basic stream? And he's like, it does not cost that. And here's why. And stop saying it because it is expensive. So shout out to Joe, shout out to the Couch Surfing Show. These things are really expensive, but personally, outside of being a WSL person, just as a surf fan, I always appreciate anyone willing to spend the money just to let us watch high-level surfing, whether those are WSL events or not.
Well, I actually texted you, and I sent you that video of Joe as soon as he posted it because everybody was talking a ton of smack, and I actually saw him in the water the very next day, and I told him, hey, like, I'm super proud of you for posting that. I'm really happy about what you were able to do and what you were able to showcase, not only for the sport, but what surfers in general do. And surfers usually want things for free, and they want it now. And unfortunately, a lot of people have paying jobs too, and they can't be able to afford everything that is a luxury to them. And as we all know, surfing's pretty expensive, Dave. So, shout out to Joe and Couch Surfing Show. All those guys put in a ton of work, and just goes to show you, if they weren't able to have a live stream for the actual Pipe Masters event, which now runs from the original CT schedule, the 8th to the 20th of December, dude, that's one of the most prestigious events and one of the most prestigious windows in the entirety of the sport. So that goes to show you, it's not $20,000, it's not $5,000, it's a lot more than that, and it takes more than just one person to be able to run a show like that. And I truly agree with you. I hope we get to see a broadcast for that event in the future, because I think the surfers are deserving of it too. And of course, you want to highlight the wave. You want to showcase the waves. Imagine if we would have been able to see Koa Smith Perfect 10 live on the broadcast. That's one of the most amazing waves I've seen at Pipe the last few years, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. And I had both streams up. So another shout out to Berger and the Black Bear crew, and for Nate and Zord and their YouTube channel, because I had them both up, both angles. So I was eating it up. But yeah. Anyway, who else you got for losers off season wise, Mitch?
Yeah, well, a shift in the schedule means that we're axing Sunset Beach. As you know, Dave, was never my favorite wave to compete at, or just to watch in particular. It's a really difficult venue, especially if you're somebody shooting the event too. It's a lot of ground to cover. It's a really difficult wave. You see a lot of waves on top of each other too. So just being able to have a different venue to me is a big factor when it comes to diversity of waves on the Gem Tip Tour. It does affect certain people though. We've seen specialists like Jack Robinson, who's been a champion there before. He had 3 excellent heats on finals day last year in 2024. Molly Picklum has a couple of event wins right there. And of course, got to give a shout out to my guy, Kanoe Igarashi, who's made 2 finals there in the last 3 years. It was an excellent venue for him. But now with the shift to Abu Dhabi, I feel like it opens the door for a lot of other people. But, Sunset Beach, it's off of the schedule, and I just think it wasn't necessarily the most exciting of waves, and it was a really difficult venue to run, too. You could see it at the point. You could see it way on the outside, especially on the West Bowl, but it was inconsistent at times, and I feel like we made the right decision moving somewhere else.
It's a funny one, right? Because it's one of those venues for me, like as a fan, where, as you point out, it's so big, it moves around so much that you can have 2 surfers out there, you can have 3 surfers out there, you can do overlapping heats, and there's still not a ton of rides happening because everyone's just navigating this expansive lineup. But so sometimes watching it live is tough, but it's one of those venues, especially in recent years, where when I watch the highlights, I'm like, this is some of my favorite surfing. The boards they're riding, the approach they're taking, the power. And I think I'm mostly just drawn to the way surfers in the modern era read that wave and are able to be, so powerful and so precise, because it is such a hard wave. But I'm with you, man. I think Sunset Beach, it really provided an interesting point of difference for the CT in terms of the venues. I think Abu Dhabi will as well, but just for a different reason.
Yeah.
Challenging lineup. I thought we saw some special surfing there, but maybe it'll be reborn in some fashion on the CS or the QS in the future. It's a special spot. But and my second loser from the off season is this is a bit heady, but it's going to be the ongoing conversation around legacy surf industry brands. Most of us, myself included, we lived through the arguable peak of the big brands of the mid 2000s, and since then, post-global financial crisis, 2008, the ever-changing landscape of retail, many of them have struggled, and those have been public struggles. And to be clear, my loser isn't any of the particular brands, but more the conversation around what the industry is going to. There are admittedly really good reporters out there on this particular conversation. I would shout out Tiffany Montgomery at Shop Eat Surf. She does an awesome job. But so often you hear from the anonymous commentariat sort of dancing a little digital jig, like when these brands have rough news, because whatever, they thought they got too big, which of course it runs afoul of every surfer's self-styled sort of progressive nonconformist self-assessment. And but these are the same people, these commentators who Loved that Dane Reynolds used to put out content from multiple Mentawai trips aboard the Indies Trader 4, right? Or they loved when John released A View from a Blue Moon, or they loved the $1 million prize purse in New York, or the search events, or high quality wetsuits for like relatively affordable prices. And I want to be super clear here, right? Because this is going to get clipped. I'll get annihilated. But I am not caping up for capitalism here. That's an entirely different conversation that I'm definitely on the other side of. But my point is the surf industry conversation seems kind of mired in a lack of nuance, or hypocrisy even. Like, we trash the surfing world for getting too big, but then we trash it when it's not investing in surfers or venues or content or products that we love. So obviously, it's complicated, and I do think it's really exciting that there's a ton of new brands making great products and investing in really cool stuff in surfing. But I also think it's fair, and I think it's cool to recognize the brands that were here before for what they did and to cheer them on when they still invest in stuff we like. I don't think it has to be either or, and I guess that's a little long-winded, but that was my second loser from the offseason.
No, but it's an excellent point, though, and I actually have one of the things that you touched on as one of my winners, so I'm going to save it for then. But it's an excellent point because you don't want to use the term sellout, but you can't blame people for trying to make a profit off of something that's really hard to make a profit off of right now. So mid to late 2000s, you were still doing as well as you could have. Mid to late 90s, heavens for everybody else. I mean, Kelly had $1 million contracts way before everybody else was able to buy multiple properties. Just look at Andy Joel's contract with Billabong back in the day. Like, all those guys were making a lot more than even the highest paid surfer is making right now. So, I feel for a lot of those guys because I was one of those people that struggled financially doing the qualifying series, trying to make a living doing this. And for those people that are actually succeeding right now on the competitive side of things, Dave, and for them to barely be able to afford a house, like, I feel for them. I'm 30 years old right now. Like, none of us our age are even close to affording anything soon. So hopefully that can switch around, and hopefully we get to see some of these smaller brands eventually make a larger impact on the social perspective of surfing overall. So to me, I think that would be the most beautiful thing to see.
Totally. Yeah, I'm rooting for everybody. Like, I hope everyone succeeds. Everyone that wants to keep investing in cool stuff in surfing, whether it's with the WSL or not. Like, it's,
exactly.
Surfers want to see it. So, like, and, my understanding and experience, there's more surfers than ever. So it's a market. Anyway.
Exactly. Let's just make the industry an actual industry. That's the way I look at it. Let's make it profitable enough to the point where everybody can have success. Now, let's deviate a little because we're getting kind of heated over here about the industry talk. But my third loser are the slow starters. And, not to bag on anybody, but this is a case of people that tend to have a tough time in the first few events of the seasons. As I mentioned before, Sunset Beach, it's out. We have Abu Dhabi now, which is a really complex wave, much more different, of course, a much more different time zone too. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're probably going to have a night session. I don't know the exact format yet, but based off of what we saw at the Surf Ranch the last time we had the CT event there, I'm more than likely thinking that we will be having a surf event at nighttime too. So having to surf multiple times in a day is going to be a big factor. Obviously, with the addition of Snapper being back before the cut too, it's going to be big for a lot of people who competed there before, both on the CS and at the CT level. That's a major thing, especially when you involve Philippe. And of course, one of my all-time favorites right there. If somebody like Matt Wilkinson or somebody like that backhand, Ian Gouveia dropped a courageous flip there, we're seeing prospects come up and really play big dividends at a wave that wasn't necessarily known for pushing the boundaries within air. We're seeing it now. And of course, J-Bay after the cut too, lowers after the cut. You want to be able to make the cut to be able to surf these quality waves that are everybody's thinking the Dream Tour's back. Let's get to those points. So make sure that you're doing well in the first 3 or 4 events so that way you're not playing catch-up. Imai Devault was one of those few to me that really had a stand-up performance in Margaret River. It came down to that very last event for him to requalify. But then after that, wasn't able to really get success. Luckily, it was pre-cut when he was able to do that. So he was safe. You can't necessarily afford to do that right now. Just because there's 7 events instead of 5 doesn't necessarily mean that you have more time to adjust.
It's bulletproof coaching advice from you there, Mitch. Do well in the first 4 events, because if they don't, they're screwed. Third loser from me. not as heady, midway heady. Kelly Slater fans, where is he? Didn't surf the Eddie, isn't surfing Tahui backdoor shootout. You know, of course I'm kidding. He doesn't owe us anything. He's got a new baby boy, but he has been, I don't know if you feel this way too, Mitch, but like kind of eerily quiet on social media lately. There's a lot of like reposts and nostalgia posts or whatever, but like, what's he doing? You know, and I will fanfic for a moment. I think he's been in the lab. I think he's been in the fortress of solitude, getting strong, getting lean, and potentially preparing for some wildcard mayhem in 2025. I do not know, without a shadow of a doubt, this isn't insider information, but it would be exciting to maybe see him at Pipeline or Abu Dhabi or a few other places where there's space. And to be clear, only if he's motivated and only if he wants it, of course. Like, space is so finite in these events. You and I have talked about it on this very podcast. Should always go to the most deserving surfers. But I think Kelly, at some of these venues, he may still be one of the most deserving surfers. I'm sure people want to see it. And for surf fans, there's probably been a rough abstinence lately from him surfing. So that's my third loser coming out of the off season.
So just to clarify things, if he were to be given a chance at both Pipe and Abu Dhabi, is there a certain time frame where he can accept the wild card, or can he decline within a 1 or 2 day period before the event starts?
Oh, it's a great question. Probably the latter. Okay. I'd say this: if he accepts the wild, no, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, no, I think there has to be a window, right, where it's like you got to let us know. It always depends. Like, if the wild card's being allocated now, we're by the time this airs, 2 weeks out from starting? Yeah, you should let us know within the first 24 hours. Otherwise, we're going to go down the list and give someone else a shot. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but I wouldn't be shocked. You know,
it is pretty surprising, though, that like the only thing I've heard of Kelly in the last 6 to 8 months was when Albie Layer posted that board for sale for the Water Patrol guys over at Peahi, and Kelly actually auctioned it off and bought it. And I thought that was super cool. Outside of that, I haven't heard anything of him, though. I don't think I've even seen a clip of him surfing recently, which is
paparazzi are slacking, man. What's going on?
Especially with how good it's been over there on the North Shore, too. That he's probably somewhere scoring some waves. He maybe has a couple of hidden clips. He might be releasing Black and White 2025. You never know.
Yeah, or maybe like post full-time on the CT, he's just gone full core Lord Shaman. He surfs with a wig to disguise himself. He's just places where no one's at. There's no filmers allowed. That'd be rad. I'd be into that story too.
Toupee. You got to call it a toupee.
Or maybe getting the Paul Fisher hair transplant. Do you see that?
That could happen. I don't know if I'm fully on board with it, though. I don't know how it would look on Kelly, but Fisher's rocking good. It. Yeah, Fisher's a world famous DJ, though. So
hold on, but we're gonna have a digression here. Is there an argument to be made that Paul Fisher is the most successful professional surfer of all time?
To me, no. Okay, because he's not just a surfer.
Fair.
If we're going just based off of the profession of surfing, it still is Kelly. If we're talking about people that are surfers that are successful, he's definitely top 10 for sure.
This is I was going right there with the phrasing. Maybe he might be top. We'll see.
It's a good point, though. Does Mark Zuckerberg count then too, or is he just a foiler?
That's a good one. So the question would have to be, what did I say the first time? Oh, Miguel, cut this out. But out of the history of professional surfing, is he the most successful? Not specifically at professional surfing.
Yeah, the ones that chose a different career path once they were a professional surfer. I'd probably say so. Yeah, I'd probably say so. And I mean, dude, Fisher's selling out Coachella and stuff like that, so he's got a pretty big crew that's following him worldwide. He's a winner. And speaking of first winner, segue.
Pay the big bucks.
It's obviously got to be the Surf Fans, Dave. New additions to the tour. Abu Dhabi, obviously the biggest one. Snapper coming back. J-Bay coming back. Lowers obviously a big addition, especially post-cut being the first event. But also the fact that we get to see 3 events in Australia, which to me is real good. You go to 3 very different venues, Bells, Snapper, and of course finishing with the cut over at Margaret River as always. But I really like the new additions that we got to the Championship Tour. Erin Brooks, I'm a huge fan of Joel Vaughn, as everybody knows. I think he's one of the most progressive surfers in the world, has a great air game, variations on point. Jackson Bunch, he can do a lot of good things for the island of Maui. And of course, I think a lot of the great returning surfers that haven't been as successful as I think a lot of us think they will be. Imai Devalt's one of them for me on the men's side. Of course, on the women's side, I feel like Isabella Nichols has a lot more to prove. Gabby Bryan was just outside of the top 5 last year. She was in the top 5 momentarily, got dropped down right there in Fiji too due to a big mistake that she made, during one of her heats. But I truly feel like we're looking at the best class on tour right now in 2025, both men's and females field. So, Erin Brooks could be a world champion this year. Caity could go back-to-back. We could see Caroline win number 2, or we could see Stephanie come back and win number 9. You never know. It could be all do or die and winner take all at the end over there in Fiji.
I like it. Great winner. Yours is appropriately forward-looking. My first winner is from the off-season, and that's Landon McNamara, winner of the Eddie on December 22nd, 2024. Amazing performance. Mitch, I think this one lands close to home for us. First goofy footer to win the event. And as it came out after the win, it sounds like Landon has actually been working through some things in his personal life over the last year. There were reports of an arrest warrant and a court appearance. And the way that the Eddie is formatted, there's actually quite a great deal of luck or providence that goes into winning it. It's not a progression format in the sense where you're competing against a group of people in your heat. You all got the same conditions. If you perform well, you go to the next group, right? And you go against them. It's one of those where it's a leaderboard format. So you may have a slow heat in the morning. And if you do, you're kind of screwed because the waves get better later in the day. Then those are the opportunities that you don't have. And that's not a knock on the event format because it seems like that is the best way for the Eddie to work. But I bring it up because there is a great deal of fortune associated with the event. And there's a line amongst the people who've surfed it, the people that have followed it. And it is Eddie decides who wins, because he's sending the biggest and baddest waves to the person to have the opportunity to perform. So in that sense, I'd like to think that maybe Eddie selected Landon to win on the day. And if so, maybe it's sort of a further sign that he's continuing his life in a positive direction. But either way, iconic accomplishment for Landon McNamara, and good pipe surfer too. The whole family is. So yeah. First winner for me.
Comes from a long lineage of great surfers too. Father Liam, of course, Uncle Garrett, and older brother, the firstborn that Liam had. Makai, also a great pipeline surfer, actually had a lot of success back when the Volcom event was a QS event over there in Hawaii. And of course, got to give a shout out to the Goofy Footers. I can't believe it's the first time a Goofy Footers won the Eddie, and this time being the local boy, Landon McNamara. And shout out to Luke Shepardson again, too. The local lifeguard had one of the heaviest drops out of the event. Almost went back-to-back, Dave.
That guy looks so dialed. It's unbelievable.
So
Mitch, real quick, did you ever surf Waimea at any size during your time there?
I did. I surfed Waimea when it was, good size, maybe not as big as it was during the actual Eddie. But I tried to surf pinballs as much as possible just to get, kind of prepared with the right board and the equipment and everything, because when pinballs is breaking, there's still very few people out, and it's really the greatest proving ground. I actually just saw a clip that Eden Walla and Zion Walla paddled out there when it was smaller by themselves. Father John, who's a great lifeguard, former pro surfer from San Clemente too, let them paddle out by themselves, and I think it's actually the perfect size for you to kind of make that jump, eventually transition into something like Waimea. But it's those kind of days which I prefer, and then you eventually make the bigger jump into those larger days. Sunset Beach is another wave in particular to that kind of thing too, that you want to get prepared and know how to ride a larger board, know where you're at in the lineup too. Those can be big lineups out there, Dave, and props to those guys, because Luke during his breaks too was keeping everybody safe, just as he was last year when he won the event. And I think those kind of stories are are those miracle moments, the Cinderella stories, as we should be seeing during the middle of the year at Lower Trestles. That's my second winner, baby. And stoked that we got an event back in California, as regular CT event. And I think a lot of people that are locals are going to be stoked to see the very best men and women compete at the most high performance and the most consistent venue on the West Coast of the United States, especially it being the first event after the cut. I feel like it's going to free a lot of people up. I'm talking about Jack Robinson, who needs a good result right there. Ethan Ewing, who was runner-up to the World Championship at that venue 2 years ago. And, of course, can't go by Filipe Toledo, who's looking to be the most dominant surfer at that wave in particular. It's now his home break. I feel like the women are going to shine too. Caity and Caroline, what an epic final. But, of course, the addition of Erin Brooks to the Championship Tour is going to make lowers that so much more spectacular, Dave.
I like it. And not only is your answer related to my second winner, but this is also my answer that's the sister answer to one of your losers. But second winner for me are the rookie high-performance surfing prospects. Pre-cut, we now have 7 events instead of the 5. And added to those pre-cut events, we have Surf Abu Dhabi, Punta Roca in El Salvador, and Snapper Rocks on the Gold Coast, mixed in there amongst Pipeline, Supertubos, Bells Beach, and Margaret River. So not only do they have the 2 extra events before the cut, but you could argue that the faster, more progressive surfers compared to past seasons, have a relatively better advantage in 2025 than they did before, especially at those venues that we were talking about. So the true CT rookie class of 2025, we've got Bella Kenworthy, Erin Brooks, Vahine Fierro, Marco Migno, Joel Vaughn, George Pitar, Edgard Grosjean, and Jackson Bunch. So I'm excited to see what they got, and I'm excited to kind of compare what was the rookie class performance looking like in 2025 compared to the last few years, where those first 5 events, as well as the earlier cut, probably created a different kind of set of pressures for the rookies.
I'm looking at the rankings once again, and I just saw that Miggy has a real good ranking coming into the season, number 6 on the Challenger Series. I feel like, especially with Tahiti being the last event of the regular season, he could be a sneaky link moving into the finals over there in Fiji. And next thing you know, we head to Fiji. He's competed there as a CT surfer as well, has a lot of experience just free surfing that wave over at Cloudbreak and at restaurants. I kind of feel like he's one of those guys that he gets in there in the mix and he could be a world champion. And, of course, long career on the Championship Tour, more than 13 seasons now, been successful at many different venues. I agree, though. I think we're going to see a lot of these progressive surfers dominate a lot of these events, especially Abu Dhabi. Like, if the format goes down the way it's been before, you get 2 or 3 chances, 2 lefts, 3 rights, whatever, you should be going all out. I mean, especially if it's a leaderboard format. You're trying to beat the people that are on top of you. And you know that Filipe, you know that Gabe, you know that Kanoa, all those guys are going to be able to post good scores. You should be trying to go pedal to the metal from the very beginning of that wave. So if you're Joel Vaughn, if you're Marco Migno, you have the progressive stuff, you have nothing to lose at the beginning of the season, especially with what I said, that you want to get off to a quick start. You make sure that that's an event that you want to capitalize on, especially when you're talking about a good time frame in between Abu Dhabi and Portugal. Because if not, your mind just starts racing and you're thinking about things over and over again, and it doesn't work out in your favor. I've been there before. You want to make sure that you're doing things when they should be done. I'm getting a little heated here tonight, Dave. It's our first...
It's been a while, man.
First
We're ready
one
to roll.
of the season.
We got plenty to talk about.
We're getting riled up already. I like it. My third winner, and I think it comes to nobody's surprise, it's the up-and-coming surf brands. Big shout-out especially to Vissla. They've been sponsoring our Vissla CT Shaper Rankings for 3 years now. IPDE, Florence Marine X, John John's success this year has been huge for them. And, of course, a lot of other brands like Salty Crew, Dark Seas, among others. All these people are making huge dividends when it comes to the industry. They're sponsoring a lot of great surfers, up-and-coming surfers within their respective regions, too. And look at who it's benefited. I know that Cole Houshman's no longer on the Vissla team, but look at how much impact they had on his success. Of course, Matthew McGillivray, Liam O'Brien, Sister Evolution with Sawyer Lindblad. She was our Rookie of the Year on the Championship Tour for 2024. These types of brands are giving people chances and opportunities. What's that?
I said, and Lakey coming back.
Oh, yeah, Lakey Peterson.
Yeah,
right.
So Vissla and Sister Revolution, they've got a program on tour.
Yeah, so, I mean, it just comes down to giving these people a chance. And it's the one thing that you want to see. That's how a lot of these brands started off initially. And look at them now. They're becoming more and more core brands and staples of the surf industry, especially in Southern California. I'm really excited to see the kind of partnerships we can get out of them in the future too, Dave.
I like it. And I can tie that into my final winner from the off-season too, but it is Nathan Florence. We mentioned him, right? He was providing a pirate stream for December's Pipe Masters, but not only was he working his sort of rebel media mogul bona fides, but he was also surfing the event. He eventually won it. His beautiful wife was commentating on the sand. Like, I feel like he had a great month. And, you know, I think the important thing that I want to highlight with someone like Nate Florence is that outside of the razzle dazzle of the social media profile or the YouTube channel or the Florence brand, like, he has continued to like evolve as an incredible all around surfer. You know, Pipe Master is just sort of the latest feather in his cap, but big wave hero, like slab tour enthusiast. And I remember even like a few years ago, he was doing this thing on his YouTube. He was just calling it air camp because he didn't know how to do airs and he just chronicled himself like learning how to do a full rotation over like I don't know how many weeks, but he just went out and did it. So yeah, I think he's having a moment. I think the Pipe Masters win is, you know, it's not the same as it used to be back when it was a CT event, but it still means something. And I think,
of course,
he's had an incredible run, and, you know, who knows, maybe we'll get to see him in the mix in some Challenger Series events or some CTs in the future. We'll see what goes on with that guy.
I think he actually gets a wild card for Pipe.
There you go.
I mean, I know it's not official, but it's right around the corner. And with that success, him being John's brother, being from right there, kind of seems like it's almost obvious to me that he's going to get into the event, or at least be an alternate on the beach and get a call in right at the end of the day.
I think the lineup should have like wild card privileges where it's like we just say like, all right, we've decided, you know, Mick Fanning is going to be surfing J-Bay this year because we feel like it. You know?
Dude, I feel like Mick could get into snapper, right?
Mick, that's a good point. Mick gets into snapper. Bobby Martinez gets into J-Bay. How's that sound? Oh, we're good. We're good. Wild card.
Stop playing with me, dude. I'm ready.
We're good at this.
Also, want to give a big shout out to Mahina, Nathan's wife, for saying on the small broadcast that she comes second because she knew that when she married Nathan, surfing was number one. I appreciate you, Mahina. Thank you for sharing everybody's opinion when it comes to when the waves are good. She's a real one, Dave.
Good times. Well, that was our off season. I think pretty healthy winners and losers for the off season. We're going to take a quick break to get a word in from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings. Don't go anywhere. All right, we are back. This is the Lineup Podcast. I'm Dave Prodan here with my part-time co-host, Mitch Salazar. As we talked about in our opening segment, the window for CT1, the 2025 Lexus Pipe Pro presented by Yeti, starts on January 27th. Mitch, opening event thoughts. We're back at arguably the most revered wave on the planet, Pipeline. We've got accomplished veterans, we've got journeyman battlers, we've got a healthy Challenger Series and rookie class. Like, what are you thinking about heading into this first event? Who you got your eye on?
Well, the obvious favorite is world number one from last year, John Florence. He's made multiple finals there, has a win at the CT level. Of course, all of the victories during the Volcom events as well. But I think the thing that stands out the most from John during the off-season is that he's been very healthy. He's been very active, and the North Shore has had plenty of waves. So whenever he's posting a lot of clips and delivering a lot of stuff for social media content, you know that he's been busy in the ocean. And that's a good sign for us because we know that we're going to have him for a full season in 2025. He's looking to go back-to-back for the second occasion in his career with World Championships right now this year, and especially with Fiji being the final event of the season. That's where we're having the finals this year. I think it's super beneficial to him. We've seen him go on the backhand before. I think he's very underrated and underappreciated when it comes to backhand surfing, and I feel like that should be a good venue for him. Speaking about pipe in particular, though, hopefully it's 6 to 8 feet at the minimum. Backdoor working, pipe working. I feel like we want to see a lot of the young women do well. Sakura and Molly Picklim, one of the best heats of all time out there last year. Of course, Erin Brooks winning the Pipe Masters during the offseason too. She's going to be one to watch. Caroline Marks has a lot more to prove right there, but all eyes on the women's side should be on Caitlin Simmers. Last year's champion, pipes for the girls. She knows what she's capable of at that wave right there, and I feel like it's just going to be a real fun venue, and it's a great way to start off this year.
I love it. I've got no notes. I can't wait. It's been so much swell the last few weeks this season already. Hopefully it knocks that sand off the reef. Hopefully we get good wins, and we just see a big bang to start the season. But speaking of big bangs, we're back for our third season with the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings. Shaper Ranking! We have a 2-time defending Shaper of the Year, CT Shaper of the Year, in Matt Biolis and Lost Surfboards. They're back with another healthy team. Just a quick reminder for folks on how we do this. It is a combined men's and women's ranking. We count all the surfers' finishes from the quarterfinals or better. The Shapers then receive the same rankings points that correlate to their respective surfer finishes. So the higher the surfer places, the more points that Shaper receives. And we are going to track it from Pipeline through the final event of the season in Tahiti and get ourselves a winner. In a lot of sports, Mitch, off-season this discourse is often as, if not more, interesting than in-season discourse because people get fascinated with the trade news. They're like, who's going where? Who's got what contract? Who's getting dropped? Who's getting added? Have there been really any significant changes in the makeup of the world's best shapers on the CT in 2025 from what you can see?
Yes, there have. There's been 2, and they're both on the women's side. Berilu Sakura Johnson, she's over with Mayhem now, which came to a huge surprise to both of us. We were talking about it on our WhatsApp thread, and
That's right.
I actually thought that she was going to go to Pyzel. She surfed a good amount of events on Pyzel surfboards last year, and to me, they looked particularly great. The clips that I've been seeing off of the Mayhems, though, she looks awesome. Of course, a fantastic addition to Lost Team, but Brisa Hennessy moving over to the Channel Islands surfboards after riding them over at the finals. I think it's not only a big addition for them, I feel like they're going to add in a lot of points with Lakey Peterson coming back onto the Championship Tour full-time too. So they're going to have 2 big contenders right there. Channel Islands, of course, Mayhem still the person to beat. Sharp Eye, though, sneaky link right there. Philippe coming back. Of course, you have Joanna Faye, Tati right now, who's, by the way, no longer working with Coach Ross Williams.
Saw that.
Yeah, they went separate ways. And I actually think for Ross, this kind of benefits him. Less people to work with, focuses more on Betty Lou and, of course, John being his number 1 priority. But just going back to the actual board builders, though, Jason Stevenson and JS, Marco Mignot is on tour. Darren Handley, he's got Joel Vaughn and much more company with Isabella Nichols back on the Championship Tour. And, of course, if Stephanie Gilmore does return full-time, that's a big addition to DHD, Dave.
Great notes. One thing that we've talked about the last few years, of course, it's not all apples to oranges, right? Like there are kind of 3 directional tiers within the shaping labels that represent the world's best surfers on the Championship Tour. You kind of have your bigger teams that have, 9, 10 surfers. You got sort of those mid-level teams at 3 or 4, and then you got a bunch that are just, 1 or 2. And we've had so many conversations around like, well, is that super fair? And, should it just be the best 1 surfer, the best 2 surfer from each program? And we obviously considered that. But what we do want to factor in is that none of these teams have a set limit of a minimum or maximum amount of surfers. The surfers themselves, the world's best surfers, have agency in where they're choosing to go to. And if more surfers are gravitating towards certain programs, we want to kind of reflect that in the data. And so that's why we do it the way we do it. But one of the things I've noticed heading into 2025 is those 3 tiers have kind of shifted more into 2 two broad ones, right? Like there's not really any programs that are in that like 3 to 4 surfer range. Like JS has got 5, he's probably on the lower side, but Channel Islands with 9, DHD with 7, Sharp Eye with 10, Mayhem with 9. Like they're all in that same space. And then the other 8 or 10 shapers on tour all just kind of have one surfer to it. For those programs, like they can have awesome success that way. I mean, look at Chris Borst with Katie Simmers or Timmy Patterson with Italo Ferreira. And I mean, even John Pizell, 2 surfers, and John Florence and Tyler Wright. Like every shaper is going to have a different approach to this, but it is interesting to see talent move around and to see those tiers kind of evolve into from 3 to 2 spaces. But we talked about Mayhem. We talked about Matt Biolis and Lost, 2-time winner. Mitch, you're very familiar with not only those surfboards, but with their entire program. I think Gian Bernini, their team manager, deserves a ton of credit. He takes his job super seriously, and it's shown. What do you think has to happen in 2025 for any of these other programs to really challenge Lost at this point? I know some of them have comparable sizes, but just in terms of results, like what are you thinking could happen?
Well, first things first, I do have to give a major thank you to Gian Bernini. Always gets me my boards on time, but there's been something they've been working on. I have a new model that hasn't come out yet that I'm test driving for them a little bit. It works real good. That's all I can say right now, but checking the Lost Surfboards on social media to catch up, with all of their activities, because I think it's going to be a real good model, and especially for the bigger guys, they're going to like it. For other programs to be as successful as Mayhem, one thing in particular is that they have the best proving ground out of all of them. I mean, they just go to lowers and use that wave over and over again, and you have top 15 surfers, top 10 surfers, number 3 in the world like Griffin Colapinto. Caroline Marks has been a world champion before. Erin Brooks right now. You have a multitude of surfers that come from a variety of backgrounds from multiple different waves, and then they can use that expertise at one wave in particular, at lower trestles. So it goes to show you that at that one wave in particular, they can showcase many different sides of surfing on the same board, on the same shape, maybe a different model, but it all comes down to the one wave, and it's repetition and repetition and repetition. What did Mick do when he was most successful at lowers, Dave? He was riding Mayhems. He knew it. Same thing with Julian Wilson. Channel Islands just up the road in Santa Barbara. Kelly had a lot of success with those boards over there because they're right here homebred in Southern California. So I think the main thing is just having a wave that resonates with something like lower trestles. You see it over there in Snapper Rocks with DHD and JS, but it's not as high performance and it's not as consistent as we see lowers be. So to me, that's really the biggest facet out of their game. They have a lot of those great surfers because they come from that great area. But I also want to say that in San Diego, where Marcia Zuvi and the Sharp Eye team are, they have a lot of consistency at great waves too. Seaside Reef over there with Taylor Clark. They have a young up-and-coming crew that's real good too, and Levi Slauson and company. I just don't think it's as consistent and as marketable as you normally see with a lot of the guys over there at Lost Surfboards.
That's interesting, because I think even just looking at those surfboard labels, like you called out, the consistency of lower trestles is one of the best tuning grounds for high-performance surfboards. Obviously, Matt Biolis and Lost Surfboards are based there. You mentioned Sharp Eyes in San Diego, but they're close enough. Like you could consider lowers as an option for them as well. And then Channel Islands being just up the road, but also having Rincon virtually in their backyard. And when Rincon's on, it's an awesome test track, right? And then we talk about the other bigger programs like DHD and JS. For sure, like consistency is going to vary, but the wave at Miguel, make sure you bleep that out. High performance, and then obviously Snapper Rocks is not dissimilar to Rincon, just more consistent, right?
Yeah.
So it is like a great highlight on maybe the most high performance boards have to have that kind of test track just to get consistency, not just at waves like lower trestles or like Snapper Rocks, but really anywhere in the world. So yeah, it's a good insight. Do you have any preseason predictions? Like if there is a team to really make a run at Lost, Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, of course, I think JS is the one that's always looming in the background. If I don't mention Channel Islands, I think Britt's going to kill me the next time I see him. And Britt's a big guy, so I got to mention Channel Islands right there too. But I actually think it's going to be Jason Stevenson and JS Industries. I like their team a lot. I think with the addition of Miggy and Sammy full-time, they've got a real strong team, especially over there at Snapper Rocks and in Tahiti, where each one of those brothers has won before in the past. But, of course, the addition of Marco Mignot is a big thing, too. Can't forget about the success that Ryan Callanan has had throughout the entirety of the calendar year on the Championship Tour. So, to me, they're sleepers, really. I think they can resonate real big, especially at venues like Abu Dhabi, too. And, of course, no slouches at Pipeline. Those guys have done super well. Ramsey Bukiam last year defeated Jack Robinson, who had won the event the year before. So a lot of those guys on their team, they're sleeper picks, and they can barrel ride, they can throw in the air just like anybody else on tour. So they're definitely those guys that if you're not careful, they're going to moving up into the top 3 of the Vissla CT Shaper Rankings, maybe even taking number 1 after an event.
I like it. I think last year they were like my prospect spicy pick to keep an eye on in that second tier, where it's like, man, they've got the talent. They've obviously got the boards. We'll see if they can move up. I think, just looking at the number discrepancy this year, like, it wouldn't just be the JS team having a lot of success. It would be the Lost team also having to struggle a bit just based on their numbers and the balance of men and women they have on that program. So look, like, I think, geez, this is really tough. I think I do want to give credit to Channel Islands. Like, they've buoyed their team. They've added, like a CT winner already in rookie Vahine Fierro on the women's side. And the boards are going awesome. Like, we've seen the boards go well in Hawaii. We've seen the boards go well at Lower Trestles. We've seen the boards go incredible in beach breaks. So I think that could be like a real step function program this year. And then DH, we've talked about, they're very dangerous. If Steph Gilmore returns, that could be a huge asset. And then Sharp Eye, their program has been so impressive over the last few years, and they had to go without Felipe Toledo in 2024. He's going to be back in 2025. So, geez, I'm not going to pick a group because I feel like I just picked everybody anyway, but interesting times. We will find out, and we'll also find out too, like similar to last year, how much Hawaiian lumber the world's best surfers have under their feet at Pipeline. Last year we saw Pipeline and Sunset
Great
Beach,
point.
but plenty of people on Pangs, plenty of people on Arakawas and Tokoros. We'll be interested to see what it looks like this year if surfers are continuing to utilize that local shaping knowledge for a venue like Pipeline, or if, these global brands, they're continuing to refine more specialized equipment for venues like that.
So I got a question for you. Hot topic. Is Philippe still the number 1 rider for Sharp Eye, or has Jack Robinson overtaken him?
I mean, I think in 2025, across all cultures and industries and peoples, the line is, what have you done for me lately? And so with that in mind, it's Felipe's to get back, but it's probably Jack, right? I mean, Jack's been their guy last year. Jack is ascendant. Felipe could get this thing back within an event. He's that talented.
Yeah.
Right? Especially if that event is Pipeline, which is the venue that he withdrew not just from the event, but from the entire season a year ago for 2024. Any thoughts on this? I mean, one of the things that he said in stepping away from the tour was he wanted to spend time, at waves like Tahiti, at waves like Pipeline. I didn't see a ton of that free surfing wise, saw a little bit of it. Performed very well in Tahiti, I thought, during the Olympics, which was obviously a big focus for him last year, up until a point. Haven't seen a whole lot else of him. Haven't seen him in Hawaii early season. Have you heard anything on the ground in Orange County, Mitch? And just what do you think about Felipe's return to full-time CT competition at the venue where he withdrew in 2024?
I haven't really heard too much of him, and I've seen Brett Simpson, who's the team manager at Hurley now. quite a bit lately. And, I haven't actually even asked him anything about Phil. But the things that I have heard, a few months ago was that he was in great health. He was surfing. He was happy. And I think that's the most dangerous aspect of Felipe is that when he's happy and when he's on point, he is the most high-performance surfer on the planet. And especially with Abu Dhabi being on the schedule, he's no doubt number one on the list to win that event. J-Bay, best surfer there. Snapper, he's won there before. Margs, he's won there before. So all those right-handers, all those reef breaks that are going to be rippable, he's still probably the guy to beat. When it comes to boards, though, and you ask me what everybody else can do outside of Mayhem to be successful, look at how well structured Mayhem is with their tiers, and especially with how diverse their team is globally. We all know that their number one guy is Griffin, especially being from right there at Lowers and San Clemente. He's their guy right now. Just behind him, Yagodora. Just behind him, Cole Hauschman, Crosby, Colapinto. So you have multiple North Americans, you have a Brazil, and you have a lot of guys in Australia that are successful for the same brand. And now look at what Sharp Eye's done. Once they were able to get Jack, they took way more pressure off Phil, put some on the Australian surfers. Now you're getting the European surfers with Joanna Fay. Of course, you have a lot of other guys like Real Wida coming up through the program too. And of course, got to say Jake Marshall, my guy. He's been doing great for the last few years on the CT too. So that's really what it's going to take to be able to diversify your team, make sure that things are marketable, and then you get to a wave like Lowers and explode, make a big social media presence. You're selling a lot of boards, especially when you have tons of different models like we see from both Mayhem and Sharp Eye. I feel like that's something that Channel Islands has probably got to work on pretty soon. But since we don't see them that often because we're not in Australia, JS, DHD, those guys sells a lot of boards over there back home overseas. Right here in Southern California, JS has a garage in Oceanside. I know they do quite well. Brett and Riley, Heath Walker, those guys run that thing great over there. But when it comes to kind of trying to outperform the local guys, it's hard to beat that local produce, Dave. You go into Trader Joe's, you know what you're getting. You go over to Lost Surfboards, you know that you're getting the Driver 3.0, you're getting the Sub-Driver 2.0 because it works magic. You don't want to go for another brand because you don't know what to expect. You get what I'm saying?
You could have spilled the name of your special model there. Miguel would have bleeped it out. That's fine.
He's going to ask it back. He's going to ask for it back.
I think it's a really good point. I mean, it's not just the diversification of the models, right? But you're naming the surfers on the Lost team right now. You got Griffin Colapinto, who's this like all-around high-performance like phenom. You got Iago Dora, arguably one of the most stylish surfers on the planet. Incredible tube rider, incredible aerialist, incredible everything. And then he's going to be a tour sophomore in 2025, but the big hammer, right? Cole Hauschman. And they're very different surfers. So to your point, it's like there's a diversity of shapes. There's also a diversity of like the kind of surfer that he has at the elite level. It's almost like constructing like a football team or a basketball team where it's like, I don't need 11 quarterbacks or I don't need 5 centers. It's like,
great reference.
I need like all around excellent surfers, but I need them to have different strengths, right? Where if power surfing's in today, like Cole's got an advantage. If it's, style and barrel riding, Iago's got the advantage. If it's, fin-free aerials, maybe Griffin's got the advantage. They're all within the range. They could all do it all, of course, but it's like, it does feel like there's pretty distinct identities in the Lost Avengers there.
Dude, identities. That's like the perfect way to describe it. I'm looking at the women's top 10. Caroline Marks, very different surfer to Gabby Bryan, to Sawyer Limblad, to Sakura. And now you add in Erin Brooks into the mix for the Mayhem team too. A lot of diversity right there. Just with those 5 surfers alone. Now you have Sharp Eye, Tati, Joanne, 2 very different surfers, one goofy, one regular. They match up quite a bit too. So that's not good for their team. They're kind of in that kind of tier where you're either super high ranked or you're kind of at the bottom, and then you have to eventually match up against each other. But when you look at Channel Islands, they made a huge move with Brisa Hennessy because outside of, really, Bella Kenworthy, Vahine, and Lakey, they didn't have anybody in the top 10. Like, that's a big move for them. And Brees is one of the most consistent surfers on the planet. Just like at the last 2 seasons that she's had, she's been on fire. All she really needs is to win a world championship now.
Yeah, but I mean, I did know this, but you just listing off like 4 women out of the top 17 are Channel Islands team riders in 2025. That's a change.
Yeah.
You know? So, well, we are excited. We're going to geek out on board talk all season long. We appreciate Vissla and the CT Shaper Rankings for letting us do so. We will take another break, and when we come back, we will answer some listener questions. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Lineup Pod. I'm Mitch, and that's Dave Prodan, your co-host for 2025. As always, if we don't get to your question in today's segment, always write in at the Lineup Pod. We'll be able to answer your questions directly through DMs, and we might be able to answer it during an actual episode, like we will tonight.
Plenty of DM conversations over the break, so this is fun. Keep them coming. Like you know,
good ones or bad ones.
Yeah, they're all good. No one is sliding into the Lineup's DMs causing trouble. So
I'm glad to hear that, because we do have a couple of fans, believe it or not, Dave. Lindsay.Erin.Smith. She's just super stoked to hear us again. We love you, Lindsay. Thank you so much for listening, and we really appreciate those good vibes. She did. I mean,
all right. That's nice. That's really nice.
And Lindsay Erin Smith. All
right. She's on the merchandise list. Let's go.
And when you see us in public, you know, say hi. Come over. Talk some story. I feel like we're pretty approachable most of the time.
I don't try to do this, but like I get a lot of people come up in lineups wherever I'm at to talk to me about it. Like sometimes I'll like be talking to someone like just quietly, and someone will be like, "I thought I recognized your voice," and I'm like, "Oh boy." But everyone's always really nice, even if they've got disagreements. That's
fine.
Come on up and say hi. It's fun.
You can have a friendly disagreement, right?
Hey, I don't mind an unfriendly one either. Like whatever. Like, it's 2025. We need human interactions welcome in whatever capacity. Yeah.
We have to. All right, let's get into our first one. At DanJC264. Great question. Was Caroline's or Caity's world title a bigger turning point in surfing history?
Oh, easy one to start. So yeah, Caroline won 2023, Caity won 2024. That's pretty difficult, right? Because Caroline's broke that. It's going to sound funny that it's like a 15-year reign for 3 people, but it really was. Like Steph, Carissa, and Tyler, like they had locked that thing up for a decade and a half, right? And when Caroline came along, you know, she's the first goofy-footed woman to claim the world title since Chelsea Georgeson, now Hedges. That was back in 2005. So again, goofy-footer. I think that's a pretty big deal. And then, you know, Caity, on the other hand, she won the world title in only her 2nd year on tour. Caroline was in her 5th year. Caity won hers at 18. Caroline was 21, so not a ton of daylight on the age thing. And I mean, going back to that like 15-year Steph, Carissa, Tyler reign, like I think you can make an argument that Caroline busting that open maybe like smash the door open a little more for Caity to win. But then, you know, Caity's approach in surfing seem not like, I don't mean from like a performance standpoint, but just a little more radical in terms of like how unique they are.
For sure.
Long answer. I genuinely don't know. I think they're both really important, which is a cop-out for our first episode back. But I will say I might feel different after this year, right? Because depending on who takes it, like I'll probably have a better answer if I feel like it was more Caroline or Caity. I don't know. What do you think, Mitch?
I don't think one happens without the other. And I know that's kind of what you were referring to.
Right, yeah.
It's hard for me to overlook Caroline's success and how impactful she's been since day one, because she qualified when she was 15, you know. And the very first year in 2018, I remember it was my first year doing the CT broadcast full time, and J-Bay being on the schedule. Of course, you have to go through Snapper Rocks, and that was the year that we actually ran the event. We finished the event over Akira, and I think she made the quarters at snapper. Real good result to start off the season. Of course, Honolulu Bay still on the schedule. Real good venue for her, but I think we all have to remember that Caroline had a couple of setbacks with her health too, and she might have had a world championship before if it weren't for those kind of health issues. But I genuinely believe that one doesn't happen without the other. I think Caroline opened the door, as he said, for Caity. Out of the two surfers, though, who do I think probably won it in a better way? I'd probably say Caitlin Simmers. I mean, what she was able to do, especially against Caroline in pumping lowers last year, dude, those 3 matches that they had were just absurd. But just her maneuver selection overall, like I think we're seeing the very best surfer on the female side right now. In all different types of waves, So to me, she's the most important surfer in the world, as I had told you during one of our last episodes.
Yeah, I think it's so hard. Like it becomes a real razor's edge when you get to the championship tour, even when you're not talking about the world champs. Like anyone that qualifies for the championship tour are the best of the best of the best surfers you have ever seen. And I think, we have a lot of ways to talk about it. Like people talk about style. Someone once told me when they were talking about Andy Iron surfing, and they were just saying like the way he saw a wave and the lines he would draw were really unique, which it wasn't so much like his arm was like that and his knee was like that and his like torso was like that, but it was like if you stop motion the wave and you looked at the lines the surfboard drew on the face and the angles he took and where he found speed and where he shaved speed off, and the approach was unique. And I love that framing. It's always worked for me when someone says like the lines that person draws. And I think Caity Simmers on the women's tour is the first surfer in quite a while that the lines that she draws really stand out.
So once again, at DanJC264, excellent question to start off the year. Was Caroline's or Caity's world title a bigger turning point in surfing history? Just to truly iterate the point, it comes down to the turning point being the world championship. If I went debut itself, I'd probably say Caroline Marks, because she's probably been the most hyped surfer outside of Erin Brooks to qualify for the CT in the last 10 years on the women's side. When it comes to world championships, I'm going to say Caitlin Simmers, because to me, she's redefining a different era of women's surfing. Not to say that Caroline isn't world class, she is. She's an Olympic gold medalist now. She's been a world champion. I think she's going to win at least one more. But when it comes to the way we're seeing and perceiving female surfing, I think Caitlin Simmers takes the bag with that one when it comes to the world championship, Dave.
Hey, you really like King Solomon that answer. You got them both in there. I liked it. It was respectful. Way to go.
I've been reading a lot of self-help books and stuff like that. So trying to dig deep into my inner self. Our second question, and as always, really appreciate a lot of the great questions that we have here at the lineup. If we don't get to your question during the episode, we'll do our best to do it in our DMs. Our second one at Fisher Balf was here and there CGI. Please discuss laughing emoji. So
I assume he's talking about the film that John released I guess we're recording on the 8th, so about a week ago. It's called Here or There, but yeah, I think it was like John, Nathan, Ivan, and some friends on the North Shore, 2023, I think 2024 season. And I mean, going back to like, what are the points of distinction at the very like tip of the spear of the world's best surfing? I think someone asking if your content is computer generated because it doesn't look real, that's probably, you don't say that about every web edit that comes out of here. And I mean, similar to what we've been talking about, John now with his 3 world titles, Nathan with all of his accomplishments over the last couple of years, and Ivan probably intentionally not having as public a profile, but maybe the best skater of the group, incredible aerialist and tube rider himself, and just an interesting sort of enigma. Like, they're having a moment, Florence is having a moment. They're hitting at a really interesting time. And I think going back to John and John surfing, like I don't know if the surfing world's ever seen someone as capable of like reading the ocean or reading a lineup and figuring out where to be. Like you hear the best surfers in Hawaii talk about like with almost kind of like supernatural reverence, like, sunset was 10 feet today and John's out there on a 6-foot board, and I don't have to tell you how difficult that is, Mitch. Like it's not surfing the wave, because when he's on that board and he's not on like a 7-0, his surfing is incredible, harnessing the power of that wave. It's the fact that he can navigate that lineup and get into the waves, right? Like, yeah. And so I think that is the thing about John. Like, he surfs really big, powerful, critical waves as if they're small beach breaks and he's toying with them. And everything looks like it's turned up to 11 on the amplifier when that guy surfs. It's incredible. And no, I don't think it's CGI. I think a shout out to cinematographer Eric Knutson, who's an awesome surfer himself. He's been filming John for a long time, and was sort of the cinematography creative head on a lot of this work. It's an awesome clip. Everyone should see it. Looks like a lot of people have, so I don't know if I'm breaking news here, but I don't know. Any of your thoughts on that, Mitch?
It just continues to amaze me every day what John can do on a surfboard. And not just on a surfboard, on a foil, on different types of wave riding vehicles, just in the ocean itself. And, obviously one of the most talented people we've ever seen ride waves. But I think what separates him from everybody else is still the fact, as you said, that he can read the ocean like nobody else can. I think there's probably only been one other person that I've seen that can read the ocean like John can, and that's the very best of all time, Kelly Slater. They just look so into the future, so far down the line, thinking of what this wave can do and what they're predicting this wave will do. And, it doesn't cease to amaze me. The lines that he draws, of course, the barrel riding that he proves, and the consistency that he has when he's healthy. I love seeing him in video edits. Of course, we all love seeing him compete, but I think the most astounding thing about everything is that he's still continuing to do this probably 20 years into his career, because John Florence debuted the big stage of surfing when he was a preteen, and for his body to sustain the kind of damage that it has for such a long time, come back from injury, have the success that he's having right now, and continue to do so while pushing everybody else and making sure that he's still the top dog, that's impressive right there. Mm-hmm. With the generation that we have right now, all these people trying to become both social media influencers and make sure that they're still competing well, John doesn't really care about that. He puts out his edits, he goes and puts on a jersey, he surfs just as good either way, and I find a lot of respect in that. So, no, there wasn't any CTI involved in that. I think Nathan and Ivan are just crazy, and of course John follows them along. But dude, those three guys are just outstanding surfers, and hopefully they can release more edits down the line. All right, let's close it with a bang, Dave. We're finishing with a bang, and it might be the most difficult question we're going to answer all year long. From @AvantSurfWax. Is Erin Brooks the favorite to win the CT title?
That's a spicy one. Sure. I mean, let's look at like the case 4, if you're going to argue that. She's already won a CT event last year in Fiji as a wild card, which is also where this year's finals will be. You're better to comment on this than I am, Mitch, but like, I don't know if there are too many, if any, weak spots in her actual approach to wave riding, right? Forehand, backhand, airs, turns, barrels. Like, she seems to have proven herself really elite. So I think that if she's in the top 5, there's a really good chance that she can cause some upsets at Cloudbreak, because we've already seen a version of that. The case against would be, she's young, she's 17, she is a rookie, and the last rookie to win the world title was actually Stephanie Gilmore back in 2007. So, there's a I guess like an intellectual exercise where you could say, okay, how far ahead was Steph from her field when she was a rookie? How far ahead, if she even is ahead, is Erin from her field? I would say that I think Steph was sort of, especially when she started competing, very, very far ahead. Doesn't mean that like Erin's not going to prove that out in the first few events, but I wouldn't say that quite yet. And I guess another point against could be that she seems like she might be kind of physically smaller than some of the other girls. Certainly hasn't seemed to harm her in the power department from what I've seen. So, if I had to answer, like, is she the favorite to win the CT title on January 8th, 2025? I'll say no. I don't think she is the favorite. She is what I would consider a threat, which I think is a huge credit to her, and I don't know if there's any of the men as far as rookies go that I would say that about. Maybe Vahine to a degree, depending on how she performs at some of the venues. But I would just say, like, as far as Erin's concerned, like calling her a threat for the world title as a rookie is a huge credit to her.
It's valid.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that just before I wanted to lean in, even if she's not winning these events, like, maybe I could even revisit this question just for fun, like after like El Salvador, right? Or even after kind of like Portugal, like 3 events, like let's see how she's doing. Let's see how she's handling the different waves, the different pressures, the consistent need to perform at this level. And maybe at that point, even if she's not first, I might be like, yep, she's my favorite to win. So I don't know. What about you, Mitch?
I like your breakdown. And I like that you're not fully sold on it, but you're also not fully contradicting it either. Is she the favorite? No. But just to add some context, Erin Brooks wasn't born the first year that Stephanie Gilmore won her world championship. Just think about that, dude. Just think about that. Like, that's freaking crazy. And there's a chance that Stephanie's going to compete against Erin full time on the CT this year. Like, it's mind blowing. I think the biggest question is how is she going to do at a lot of the venues that she's going to be going up against very competitive and experienced veterans. Lakey Peterson, champion over at J-Bay, Tati Weston Webb, champion over at J-Bay, Punta Roca, obviously, unfamiliar territory for her. Same thing with Margaret River. She's won at Snapper Rocks, I'll give her that. Great at beach breaks, obviously. She's won in Saquarema, done very well at the U.S. Open. We all know what she can do at a great left-hander like Cloudbreak. Given that we're seeing a lot of diversity of the first few events of the season, and I think a big event for her, too, is going to be Portugal. Have to deal with the cold over there. It's a really difficult wave, especially if you're one of the lower seeds on the bracket. You usually have to come up against the high seeds that tend to do very well there. Talking about Joanda Faye, Tati, of course, a lot of the second-year, third-year surfers coming up too. Sakura, Saria Lindblad have also done very well there in the past. But I think if she makes it past the cut and gets into lowers, into a groove, no doubt to me she's making the finals. Can she win the whole thing? Of course. Will she be able to sustain the pressure as a teenager? It's a completely different question because you've had 2 people that have been able to do it in the past 5 years. One's Caroline, who was already in her early 20s, but she had already been competing for a world championship when she was a teenager. And Caitlin Simmers became the youngest world champion in history last year. So it's doable. I don't think she's the favorite, though.
All right. Final question, version 0.1b. Let's say she makes the finals at Fiji and you are in the Erin Brooks betting camp. Would you rather her be 5th at the finals? I was going to say first, but that's not really fair. 5th or 3rd?
Well, 4 or 5, you have to surf an extra heat. So 3rd, you're basically just waiting for the winner of the first match, right? I'd actually go 5th because I think you want her to be out there first thing in the morning and get her mind off of it. I don't think you want her waiting around, get the pressure to her head and make sure that she's already getting things going. I think she surfs better when she's in the rhythm, honestly. We saw that at Fiji when she won as a wild card. I think we've seen that too many times on the Challenger Series too. And I would also even say that she did that at Pipe too, when she won the Pipe Masters recently. Sure. I think she was able to get into a flow and a groove state where she just kind of stopped thinking about things and just started reacting rather than wanting to sit down and maybe wait for a certain wave. No, she went on a closeout and she won the event that way. So being a bit more active to me feels like Erin Brooks's game, especially as a rookie. No doubt she's going to be Rookie of the Year in my mind. I think Vahine's a strong contender, but I just feel like Erin has too much to lose and a lot to gain right there.
Great point. I back it. I think I would rather have her be in fifth, but I would add, for the psychological advantage of whoever was sitting in first has to know that Erin Brooks started at fifth, is building momentum, not only from a surfing perspective, but from a like overarching universal narrative perspective. And if you're the number one seed and she's coming at you for fifth, it's probably just that much extra weight psychologically heading into those final 2 or 3 matches.
Yeah. Well, and she shouldn't tire herself out either, right? She's not even 18 yet. You would think that she's got, 5-6 heats in her at least per day. So yeah, I feel like, world title contender for sure. She's a favorite, probably not. But I don't necessarily think there's a clear favorite on the women's side. I would even argue on the men's side there's not a clear favorite either outside of John. But, I think there's just too much talent nowadays. There's too many variables and too many different venues that people still haven't discovered and performed at the way they wanted to. So I just think it's going to be an exciting season.
I'm excited for it too. The season's going to kick off in just a couple of weeks at the Lexus Pipe Pro presented by Yeti. Thanks to everyone who listens to us at the Lineup Pod. Keep those questions and comments coming. Mitch, it's 2025, man. Happy New Year, and we're going to talk real soon.
Yeah, and tune into World Juniors January 13th and 19th over there in the Philippines. See you guys soon.